All right, Spearheads. Today I'm going to do a review on a pair of shoes. They're not exactly new to the market, but they're new to me. It is the Salomon X Ultra, and I've always kind of been a Merrell guy. It just is what it is. The Merrells that I've kind of been using for ages now are these ventilators and the Moab Waterproof. Again, now usually my go-to is the ventilator, and I've worn this exact set right here through all kinds of different conditions and events and backpacking trips and hiking and whatnot. I've worn them in Go Ruck events, Spartan events, Mud Challenger, Warrior Dash, you name it, even an ab sock, a Go Ruck ab sock, which took me in salt water and out of salt water repeatedly all night long, 12 to 14 hours or so, and plus then you got to ruck miles with team weights and whatnot. But, you know, out of the water, in the sand, back in the water, in the sand, you know, repeat. They've done really good for me, and I've been really happy with the Moabs. But when I was getting ready to do a Colorado backpacking trip weekend before last, I realized, you know, I may need to get new shoes because, again, these have just been beat to shit. And so the tread on these is almost gone. So I went to REI, honest to God, with the intent of picking up a new set of Moab ventilators. So I'm going to actually use the waterproof Moabs because the tread's a little bit newer. But what caught my attention on the Salomons was the tread. And going into Colorado, where we were going to be crossing, we're doing a 4-pass loop in Maroon Bells, which is 4 passes all over 11,000 feet of elevation, all the way up to 12,500. And then you drop back down to about 8 or so, give or take, after you go over each pass. So it's a constant up and down. And so knowing that, I wanted something that had a little more tread that was going to afford me some better traction, especially on the climb up. Looking at the Salomons, I saw how it has these kind of angular treads, which would be great for climbing up. The Moabs have round. And they got some treads over here, but in all, I just looked at the two, and I, couldn't believe I was going to get ready to buy something besides the Merrell, but I ended up going with the Salomons. What I liked about the Salomons, again, was the tread. These are great for going up, and then these kind of right here actually are really good at catching you on the down slopes. So that was great. The other thing I noticed about the Salomons compared to the Merrells was the toe was a little bit more rigid. The Merrells have a kind of a softer toe, and I have stubbed my toe on the Merrells before. We crossed some pretty horrendous passes in Colorado where avalanche, rock slides had come down and the trail was completely gone. That was near Snowmass Lake. Trail was completely gone. We had to cross a whole side of a mountain going over a rock slide. Was kind of sketchy, by the way, but I didn't stub my toe the whole time I was there in Colorado. Going downhill, I didn't do any toe stubbing, which was great. The other thing I noticed is the shoe's a little more rigid in the middle than, say, the Merrells. What that does is when you step on a rock in the Merrells, you'll feel it. It is what it is. Sorry, Merrell. But when you step on a rock with the Salomons, I didn't feel it as much. The shoe remained more rigid. So therefore, I didn't feel a lot of the rocks that I stepped on, which was great for comfort-wise, allowed me to do more miles more comfortably, and I think we covered in 5 days. It was like 30 miles with full packs. So that was really nice. The other thing that really kind of got my attention right off the bat at the store was these Kevlar shoelaces. Now, I know a lot of trail runners, this is old news to a lot of trail runner guys, right? The cross-country runners. But for the hiking crowd, this is is not exactly typical. Usually you just get these typical shoelaces that kind of come with these. So I was a little, I don't like to have, I always say keep it simple, right? The more moving parts, the more opportunities you have for things to break. And in a survival situation, you don't want things to break. You want your gear to function the way it should function, and the way it's supposed to function, and the way you need it to function when you need it. That is the name of survival, right? You need stuff to work when you need it to work. I'm happy to say that this held up really well, actually. I had no problems with this whatsoever. When I tightened it, it stayed tight. When I loosened it, it stayed right where I wanted it. The best part about it is when you tightened it, you just kind of tuck this thing up under the tongue here, or the cover on the tongue, and it all kind of gets out of the way when you're hiking, which was great because I didn't ever snag on anything. I also broke these shoes in for only about 5 days before I went to Colorado with them. And the way I broke them in was some trail running and then also some mountain biking. And if you've ever done mountain biking with conventional shoelaces, you know that sometimes your shoelaces can catch on the pedals, and especially on your right foot, on the derailleur, front derailleur, or on the chain set, the chain ring. I think we may have all had that happen if we were mountain bikers, but when I tucked these in, it didn't happen at all. So I broke them in for 5 days, got them muddy, got them wet, wore them around, and then I took them to Colorado. Really happy to report that didn't get any blisters. I did get some warm spots right along here and right along here, but once I and that was about day 3, to be honest. And once I put moleskin on my feet in those spots, those hot spots never turned into blisters. So that was really great. I like that about them. They actually weigh in at a good, decent weight too. These, I think, only weigh in at 15.3 ounces, if I'm not mistaken. 15.8 ounces. Whereas opposed to the Merrell Moab ventilators, we're looking at 1 pound 3.4, and on the waterproof, probably more, 1 pound 3.7. So they were actually lighter than the Merrells. They were actually lighter than the Merrells as well, which really helped a lot when you're doing a lot of climbing and descending and miles with packs and gear and all that kind of stuff. It's really nice to have a lighter shoe on your foot. I wore them in mud in Colorado. And this was all going uphill and downhill. Wore them in mud, wore them in rain. We got snowed on once, hailed on once. And through it all, they never really lost traction for me, again, because these parts right here are really good at traction on the uphill, and these little divots created right in here are catching you on the downhill when you're like this. So they actually did really well on both fronts, on both the uphill and the downhill. I never really lost traction. My feet were always really comfortable. I did spend a little extra money at REI, and I bought these kind of pricey Super Feet Trailblazer comfort insole things. They were not cheap. They're about $49. Normally, I don't go that route with inserts. I kind of just tough it out, and I'm at CVS gelling like Magellan, right? These things were, again, about $49. But I have to say that these, combined with the shoe, actually probably saved my feet, because there were people that I was hiking with that were actually getting blisters. They were getting sores. They were not doing well with their feet. They were stubbing their toes. And again, I didn't really stub my toe on this. This is a lot firmer than, say, the Moab ventilator. So I didn't have any feet problems. And when you're doing that kind of stuff out there, and especially in a survival scenario, your feet are kind of everything. You don't want to have busted up toes. You don't want to have, messed up arches of your foot stepping on rocks. You want to make sure your feet, are protected. They're vital to your survival out there. So I felt like these did a really good job for me. So all in all, I'd have to give these things, I have no complaints about them. I can't find one. I have to give them 5 out of 5 stars. So that's what I got. If you got a pair of these and you have a similar experience or a different one, whatever, if you got comments on your pair of Salomon X Ultras, leave them in the comments below. If they're different from mine, they may help somebody else out. If they work for you, that's great. If they didn't work for you, let us know. Let me know what didn't work for you. I'm always looking for new feedback on stuff like that, because it kind of helps me decide on what gear I'm going to get next time. But as it goes, I think I'm going to get another pair of these. I may get the lighter trail runners just for mountain biking. because so far these things are really awesome. So that's all I got. Great shoe. I think they cost me about $120 or so at REI. Again, the inserts were about $49. So yeah, it is what it is. Again, sometimes you can get away with skimping on some gear, saving some money on one piece of gear in order to get something better. I don't really recommend that with your feet. If you're going to spend money on something, spend it on your feet. So anyway, that's all I got. If you guys have any questions or feedback, again, leave it in the comments. If this helped you make a decision, then by all means, please hit the subscribe button over there. And we'll talk to you on the next gear review. Spirit Survival out.